Aloha. So we are in Washington Square Park. I get asked all the time, what is it like to just see what I see? Now, the challenging thing with today is that I can't validate the things today because I'm not working one-on-one with an archaeologist or historian to validate the things that I see, or any kind of entomologist or any kind of scientist that works with plants and more. So I'm just going to describe the way that things look, and then this is what I utilize to then cross-reference that information when I am working together with the client so we can actually provide evidence. So Washington Square Park, where the heck am I? Where the heck am I? So this place where we are right now, Washington Square Park, used to be called Potter's Field. Now, what we don't know, a lot of even New Yorkers don't even know this, is that this area was an area where they used to have a whole bunch of different kinds of cemeteries, and they used to just throw bodies in this area. There are over 25,000 bodies buried in Washington Square Park. Jake's eyes, if you could see Jake's eyes right now. And in fact, all the parks in New York City, Madison Square Park, Jake, Washington Square Park, these are all areas that actually were old cemeteries. So this was an old cemetery, but it was also a field before that where a lot of bodies would be. Now, they didn't discover that there were over 25,000 bodies here until they started to excavate this land. And the bodies are actually still here. They just moved the tombstones. It's like the backstory of a really bad 80s horror film. They just moved the tombstones, but that's actually what they did. When they did the bathrooms over there, most bathrooms are actually relatively new, but when they put those bathrooms in, they discovered when they moved the bathrooms and they were going down underground to kind of excavate more, they found a crypt underneath there, and it was flooding. So there's still all this energy in this land. So I actually come back to this park specifically just because it's such a huge aggregate of all these other individuals that kind of come and hang out. And this is where New Yorkers and New Yorkers, and this is where there's lots of artisans out. But the energy in the land here is very, very different than the energy in the land underneath where some of these old buildings are. And there's energy there too, but this land is very specific. So why don't we go on a little adventure? Follow me! So this is my favorite spot in all of the park, and it's one of my most favorite parts of New York City. Why? Because we are standing in front of Hangmans Elm. What is that? So there are documented cases of New York City's last hangings, which is actually not this tree. It's actually over there towards where the arch was. But there are speculations that the last tree that they used to use to hang is here in Washington Square Park. Most people speculate that it's actually over there on the east corner of the park, but it's actually not. It's this tree here. How? Why would I say that? Because the energy around this tree is very, very different than the energy around all the other trees. And I have walked this park hundreds of times to try to figure out where does that energy shift, and it's this tree. So I want to show you a few things. This tree is hundreds of years old. And when you learn how to communicate sentiently to plant energy, if you were to come to this park, so we're at the northwest corner of this park, if you were to touch this tree has an incredible amount of slow and low vibrations. If you look really closely, you're going to see that the tree actually would be the equivalent of a little bit of tumor. On different parts of the tree, these little nodules moving all the way up. So this is the tree that I come to every year on my birthday. Why do I do that? Because on my birthday, I want to celebrate life. And this tree has actually taken away multiple lives. And every single node where you would see some of these different nodules, these little like tumorous nodules on this tree, are one of the different nodes of where that tree went through an extreme amount of droppage of energy. And even when you see moments like this where the tree is actually weeping in different parts, there's different rooted reasons why the tree might do that. However, there's also energetic reasons why the tree does that, because of the soil, because of the rooting, and more. If you touch this, and technically you're not supposed to step over this, but I do. I just take a look at where the cops are. There's cops over here. But when you step over this and you touch that tree and quiet your mind, really still your mind and remove all judgment, the vibration of that tree energetically is very, very slow and low. And it refers to everyone as friend. I mean, I call everyone friend as well, but it refers to everyone as friend and as family. But truly, if you were to go all the way up and take a look at where some of the different vibrations around what some of those branches are, you would actually see a lot of residual up there. What does that mean? When you are tuning into residual, you're looking at the vibrational field of how spirit energy can communicate. Remember that spirit energy communicates in a multitude of dimensional ways, including vibrations. And some of the lower vibrations of how spirit energy can communicate is in connection to an echo of that conscious energy or residual. And there is residual in this tree. It's so hard to validate that. Maybe someone is going to watch this because I want a historian to come and say, hey, we saw your video. You are right. That is actually the tree. Because not only does this tree have so much residual. Hello, sir, I'm being interviewed. Not only does that tree have so much residual, but there's multitude of residual. There's child residual in this tree as well. Now, what does that mean? Maybe a child was climbing and it kind of found a home in this tree quite frequently when this was not what it is now. But beyond that, there is residual of male and female in the tree. Now you want to come touch it, don't you? Touch the tree. Wait till the cops are gone. So let's talk about something. This is the challenging part about not being able to validate everything, but I'm going to tell you something that I do with this tree of how I start to become inquisitive and how I start to lean in and how I start to say, what else can I discover about the archaeology and the history of different kinds of locations? So when you look up into this tree, I don't know if you can see, Jake, but in this little corner area over here, this little 90-degree area right up here on that tree, there is a slight swirl of energy that happens. So then I become very inquisitive about that. I want to investigate further, and it depends on how the energy swirls. When I see energy swirling or pooling or dropping or lifting or kind of creating like a little bit of line-like effects, I know that there's energy present that is in communication to how spirit energy can move. How do I know that? Because when I am working with spirit energy, for me, everything is very visual in the vibrancy field and the frequency and more. And that tree has that energy up there, which is why I believe that this is the actual last hanging elm. Because up here, that energy that swirls up on that little nape over there is dominant male energy. Now, it not only is a dominant male, but there's another energy slightly above that's dominant female, but that's not at the same time. Those hangings wouldn't have happened at the same time because the energy up top isn't in a swirl, which is more like dominant feeling for me of masculinity, but the energy above that is older than that, and that energy doesn't have a swirl. That energy has a droppage-like sensation, which for me most dominantly resonates as female energy first. So again, when I'm tuning in to the way that I see spirit energy comes in a series of colors, a series of vibrations. Do you hear that honking? Wow. Right? More echo consciousness almost happened. Someone on their Revel bike was being very, very lackadaisical with how they were driving. Anyway, so that is some of my indicators of how I choose to tune in to how spirit energy might be in connection to a certain location. Wow. So we're going to walk towards an area of the park where there is what I would call a lot of large drain energy. Drain is not portal, drain is not vortex, although there are vortices here, but we're not talking about that. When there are a large aggregate of people that move through different areas, energy starts to become almost like a path. Like you're walking around a certain path and it just kind of creates a dirt road, and then that dirt road becomes traveled well. Energy does the same exact thing, and I call it drains. And the tricky thing with drains is that drains, unlike vortice and unlike portal, actually drain the energy. They have a tendency to focus predominantly towards where there are openings, like doorways or entranceways, or through areas where there's an opening of where a door would go. And in fact, if you are ever sitting in a location and you have a moment where you say, wow, I just feel all of a sudden, I just feel like all my energy just dropped, more than likely you are sitting in a drain. Take a look at where you're sitting. Usually you'll be sitting close to where people pool, where they're exiting or leaving. So we're going to show you one right over here. So we're at the Arch. Now this is quintessential Washington Square Park. You see George Washington up there looking like a showgirl. There is a very large aggregate of drain energy, actually close to where the front of where the arch is. It's not a circle. I think that a big misconception is that energy moves in circles. This one does not move in a circle. It's like a paint splatter is what it looks like. What does that mean? I know that when a large aggregate of people are here, they're going to have certain kinds of emotions and feelings. Gonna disappear behind that car. In 1819, this area is where New York City's documented last hanging actually was. Now, it wasn't from one of the trees. It was actually, they had built something for the last hanging to happen. It was a woman named Rose Butler. Rose Butler was a slave. We were kind of in the phase of emancipation in New York City at that time. She was only 19 years old, and she was accused of setting the porch on fire of the people who were her owners, and she tied the door closed, which also, like, hell yes, Rose. But Rose was hung in this park, and she was the very last hanging. Now, people don't know what area she was hung in. It is speculated that it's somewhere around where the actual arch was. For me, when I look at residual Rose energy, it's actually around this area where we're standing. Why would I say that? If I tune into what is in residual, there is a larger group of people that move towards this way. And in fact, it looks like she was led from the this is the northeastern corner. It looks like she was led this way, which is a little confusing because I actually think that the house that she lived in was down there by Minetta, but they must have brought her around this way because the energy pulls down this way. Large, big group residual energy is here. And here's where it gets really, really wild because there was so much residual, people feeding it, watching it, looking at this whole entire experience. The trees in this whole entire area, they're gorgeous, but the trees in this area don't shine as bright as the trees opposite of us. These trees are actually a little duller, and they're the same trees. They're the same species of trees on both sides. There's a lot of different species here, but they're planted on both sides, but the trees in this area grow a little bit differently. So this is just one of those things that I would then say, I gotta find a historian to say, hey, was this actually the area where she was hung? And that's what I'm looking for. Are you out there? Can you find me? But that's what it looks like. So that's what it looks like this energy does in this area. And then when I speak, when I communicate to the land underneath it, there's so much residual in the soil that then the soil says yes. Wild, right? Isn't that wild, Jake? So, surprise! So I'm actually here with I consider you a friend.
Yes.
We've actually never met. So we have met on virtual Zoom before, but I want to do something. So she actually has no idea what I'm going to ask her about right now. But what I want us to do is I want you to place your hands on the ground and try to move your energy through not what the dirt is and these are beautiful rings. I want you to move the energy through the soil for just a moment. Kind of calm the mind. You can close the eyes. I'm going to push your energy down just a little bit. And I'm going to give you a few little things to think about, and let's see if you can tune in. We've been working on tangency, you and I.
Yes.
Yeah, so we've been working on tangency, which is the ability to feel energy, whether it is residual or whether it is active. So in this area that you and I are sitting in, wow, your heart is really beating over here on this side of your body. So in this area that you and I are sitting in, there was a major death that happened in this area. And this is many, many years ago. It's verifiable. This is documented in our New York City history. And I just want to ask you a question. And I want you to say the very first thing that comes to mind, okay? The question I'm going to ask you, is it dominant male or female?
Female.
And you're correct. So let's go a little bit further. You're doing really, really well. I want a little bit more energy on this side, over here. Yeah, there you go. A little bit more. Imagine that your fingers are roots of a tree digging deeper and deeper into Earth's center. This one over here has a little bit more yellow energy to it, but I want to put a little bit more amber on this side. So just utilize that in your mind's eye. So you're correct, major female. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and please feel free to utilize a combination of intuition and imagination, which means we get to use the creative mind. In your mind's eye, what do you think are some of the things that would give you an indicator of that it being female? What are some of the things that you see around her?
I see long hair. I feel an innocence, like adolescence.
She's doing so well. Jake is like his mouth is open right now.
I'm also seeing braids.
You are killing this. So we are sitting in the area of New York City's very last hanging. And it's documented. It happened in 1819. It was the hanging of a woman named Rose Butler, a woman of color, 19 years old. Right? So
Wow.
you did a very, very good job.
Okay.
Now, in this moment, what you just did, do you feel a little tingly?
Yes.
Yeah, you feel a little
Yes,
tingly.
I do. Yes.
You feel a little tingly because just then, what happens is when we find ways to recognize energy, though this is just residual here. This is not where Rose is. She was hung in this area, right where you and I are sitting. But spiritually, energy transcends, right? But we can still be in communication to the vibrations of what is in residual. And right now, your tactile ability is tuning into what is in residual, which gives you the tingles. And in that essence, we are still in communication to that aspect of her. So your response of thank you and giving energy back is more helpful than you realize. One of the things that we're talking about that you have really been working consciously on, and we've had a few sessions, which means you have been working on this over the course of several months.
Yeah.
What you've been working on is really identifying what are my differences between when I'm tuning into what is my imagination and what is my actual intuition, because it is a finite difference, and only with practice and consistency can you know the differences. And this was a little bit of a synthesis of both, but dominant intuition, dominant things that just drop. We don't second guess, we lean into it first. It is literally this muscle. I am just so impressed and proud of you.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you. I do have to say, when you give me permission to use my imagination, then that gives me the permission to believe what's coming in.
See, but that's actually one of the major parts of how intuition works when we're starting to give ourselves the ability to say, but I actually do know things. When we say I can think abstract, there's no holds bar. We have to synthesize when it is imagination and then intuition. And then when you start to lean into the modalities of stronger healing, then we have to have strong sense of knowing. But this is how we start. We start with literally opening I know you're so excited, but opening those doorways of can imagination help to open the door or open the floodgate so more information can drop through. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you, Fred.
I'm so proud of you.
There's been so many years of, it's just your imagination, or you have a wild imagination, or that's your eyes playing tricks on you, and I have to unlearn.
It is an unlearning, and then it's being able to go back into memory recall and say, that one was my imagination, but this one was not.
Yes,
Right?
exactly right.
Good job.
Thank you.
That was so cool.
You did so good. Oh, I'm so glad I came.